All right, ladies and gentlemen, lesson 312, distinguishing between multiplication and division. Okay, a couple I can statements this time. That's a little different than we're used to, but we're going to go ahead and write them both down. I can recognize when to multiply and when to divide in word problems. And your second one is I can predict whether the answer will be greater or less than the starting number in a given equation. Okay, so second one will make a little more sense as we go through this. I'm going to move on, but if you need to pause to write these down, please do so. All right. So in these equations that they've shown us, they're going to have us look at A times B equals C. A and B are going to be whole numbers. This here, N over D, is going to be a fraction that's going to be less than one whole. Okay, and down here you've got a unit fraction. So just some things to keep in mind as we go through this. So in the first one, will C be greater or less than A? Well, in this case, it's going to be greater. Well, why? Well, C is a whole number of groups of size A, so it must be greater than A. If you're looking at that going, huh? I'm doing the same thing. So let's put some numbers in there so we can really see what's going on. All right. So let's say A was 3 and B was 4. Well, 3 times 4 would be 12. So if I had groups of bananas and there were 3 in each group and there were 4 groups, I'd have a total of 12 bananas. Okay. I think that's what they're trying to say here. I just don't think they've said it very well. Okay. So when we take a look at this, 12 is greater than the number we started with, 3. That's really what we're trying to figure out. How does it relate to the first number? Is the answer going to be greater or less? Well, let's take a look at the next one. A times our fraction equals C. Is it going to be greater or less than A? Will C be greater or less than A? Well, it's going to be less. Why is that? Well, really, I'm just taking a fraction here of A. So whenever I multiply a fraction times a whole number, my answer is going to be smaller, okay, provided that the fraction is a fraction that's worth less than 1 and not an improper fraction, okay? So if I said A equals 3, and I said that instead of N over D, I made that 3/4. Okay, if I multiply that out, I'm going to get 9/4, or 2 1/4. 2 1/4 is less than the 3 that we started with, and that's really what they're trying to get after. That's that second I can statement you wrote down. Okay, in this next one, A divided by B equals C. Is C going to be greater or less than A? Well, it's going to be less than. Well, why? Well, because we're taking A and we're dividing it up into equal parts. So each part is going to be less than what we started with. So C has to be less than A. Well, let's look at that in reality. Okay, I have 3 and 4 for A. So 3 divided by 4 is equal to 3/4. 3/4 in this case, clearly less than the 3 we started with. What about this one, where I have a whole number divided by a unit fraction? Is C going to be greater or less than A in this case? Well, in this case, it's going to be greater. Well, why? Well, because when we divide by a unit fraction, that's the same as multiplying by the whole number at the bottom, or multiplying by the denominator, okay? So we just flip it over, all right? So we would do, let's say we had 3, and then 1 over D was 1/4 in this case. I would flip 1/4 over. 3, change my division sign to multiplication, 3 times 4 over 1. I can put my 3 over 1 as well. So 3 over 1 times 4 over 1 would be 12 over 1, and that would give me 12, okay? Now, here's some things to remember about multiplying and dividing. First and foremost, when you multiply a whole number by a whole number, your product or your answer, which is product is the answer in a multiplication problem, it's going to be larger than either whole number. Well, what does that mean? Well, 3 times 6 is 18. My answer is bigger than either of these two numbers that I multiplied. That's what that means. Okay? And by the way, if we're going through this and you need to jot some notes to help you remember any of this stuff, it's always a good idea. Okay? You don't have to. You can kind of decide where you're at with this. When you multiply a whole number by a fraction, your product or answer will be smaller than the whole number you started with. So if I do 3 times 1/6, it's going to be 3/6. And by the way, if this is a fraction here, it would still be smaller, okay? But I'm just trying to keep things pretty simple and clean today, okay? So 3 times 1/6 is 3/6. 3/6 is smaller than the 3 that we started with. I think we can all agree with that. All right. So when you divide a whole number by a whole number, your quotient answer will be smaller than either whole number in the original equation, okay? So 6 divided by 3 equals 2. 2 is going to be smaller than either of these two numbers on that left on the side of the equal sign, okay? When you divide a whole number by a fraction, your answer is going to be larger than the whole number you started with. So if I've got 6 divided by 1/3, remember that's the same as saying 6 times 3 over 1, which gives me 18, okay? Now, if you flip that same case around the other way, if you divide a fraction by a whole number, your answer will be smaller than the fraction you started with, 1/18. Okay? So, is it multiplication or division? Let's look at these word problems, and I'm going to give you a reminder. Remember, these are some of the things that you've seen before. multiplication words, division words. So Layla spent 2 hours on homework last week. This is 1/3 as many hours as Lucas spent on homework. How many hours did Lucas spend on homework? I see as many. I also see as much. Means the same thing. It sounds like a multiplication problem. So I can take the hours. Ooh, that's funky. I don't know what that extra line in there. That's supposed to be 1/3 times h equals 2. Okay? So 1/3 of some number is 2. Well, that's the same as taking 3 times some number. Okay? So, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Okay? 1/3 of what number would be 2? Let's just do this the easy way. What's 1/3 of what number is 2? That's going to be 6 hours. Okay? So, let's look at our next one. Sorry, that first one got a little mixed up there. Ashley's making bags of candy for trick-or-treaters. She has 5 pounds of candy and is putting 1/8 of a pound in every bag. How many bags of candy can Ashley make? Okay? Well, I see every bag. Okay? I also see every up here. This tells me this is a division problem. She's starting with 5, and she's going to divide it by 1/8 to figure out how many bags of candy she can make. Okay? When I flip all that around, take the 5 over 1. Why does that say 3? Pretend that says 8. Wow, I got some oopsies in here. Pretend that says 8. Let's make it say 8. It'll look prettier then. Okay? Yeah, it says 8. Said it the whole time. So that should be 40 over 1, or she can make a total of 40 bags of candy. All right? Now it's your turn. Here's your practice problem. Matthew built a rectangular rabbit pen that was 4 yards long and half a yard wide. What is the area of the rabbit pen? If you don't remember area, you may want to look that up, and we'll see you soon.